Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description below where you can find links to all my social media outlets, including where to find my patterns so you can knit them for yourself, how to join me on Facebook so we can continue this conversation, and how to support me on Patreon. Today I have a hands-on kind of thing that you're going to see my hands shortly. I've never made a video like this. It's an experiment. I have been teaching 1 hour long Zoom-based classes through my local yarn store that I work at, A Good Yarn Sarasota. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to check it out. They are 1 hour long. They're 1 hour long, and it's interactive, so it's kind of like being like this, but only you can talk to me and we get feedback and things like that. So if that's something that would interest you, make sure to check it out. The class last night was a how to do magic loop class, and in part of that class I teach people how to do the cable cast on, which there is a video for that I've already made. I'll put a link in the description below. But when you're teaching those kinds of things, I personally really think about step by step what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And when I pull through the loop and transfer it onto the left-hand needle, I'm always pointing my needles in a certain direction and doing it a certain way and keeping it consistent so the results are consistent. But then today I was watching another video of someone else doing a different cast on, and they were putting the yarn on in a different way. And I was like, does it make a difference? I'm guessing it does make a difference, but how much of a difference does it make? And what does it look like? And I honestly do not know. And so I decided to do a little experiment where I wanted to try the knitted cast on, and then the cable cast on is simply a variant of the knitted cast on, and see how the mounting of that stitch you've created onto your left-hand needle, if it makes a difference on how you do it, and if so, what the difference is. I didn't know the answer to the question, but I had this feeling there was going to be something different. So I ended up making tennis watches, because this is how I figure things out. I put yarn on the needle and I figure things out, right? And I wanted to show you the demonstrating exactly what I mean by how to mount the stitch, and show you what my results were, how different they came out. So here we go. We are going to start with the knitted cast on. It is a 2 needle cast on. You don't need a long tail, but you need to leave at least 6 inches. At least that's my guidelining. I do this. So from pinky to thumb to weave in. But we're just swatching, so that really isn't important. Tie a slip knot, basic slip knot. You wrap around your finger and make an X. Pull out your loop, grab your working yarn, pull it through the loop like that, and then it tightens it down. This is your working yarn. It's going to our loop loop ball, and then this is your tail. You ignore it. So you put the slip knot on your left-hand needle and then pull the working yarn, which snugs it up. That's why it's called a slip knot. It slips. Now, for a basic knitted cast on, it's almost precisely what name says. You take your right-hand needle, tail out of the way, insert it into this stitch, the slip knot that you've put on your needle, from left to right, front to back, and make an X. So you can see here, so look, so it's going through that front leg from left to right, and you make an X. I also kind of think of it as making a K for knit. So it's like that. Then you wrap your yarn and pull that through. Now here is the first decision that I wanted to explore. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to then transfer this loop we just made onto the left-hand needle by pointing the needles at each other and simply transferring it on. And then you tighten here and you have 2 stitches. Now I'm going to show you that again. Insert from left to right, front to back, make your needles, wrap them, pull that through, simply pull that loop out, point the needles at the other, and transfer. Okay, I'm going to show you, if I can, how to do that. Insert, left to right, front to back, wrap your yarn. You always want to go counterclockwise around the needle, pull it through, and again, see, we just pulled out that loop. We're pointing the points of the needle at each other, and you just slip it over and then pull it tight. Okay, so that's one of the standards way, but I was thinking about it because I commonly, so insert your needle just the same, left to the right, front to back, wrap your yarn, pull that loop out, but instead of pointing your needles at each other, point this needle away and transfer this way. So instead of going this way, go this way, right? Pull it down. Let's do that again. Left to right, front to back, make your X, wrap your yarn. I frequently stick that finger there so it loosens it, so it tightens it up, and then point both needles in the same direction for the transfer. I know it seems crazy. It seems like a ludicrously simple difference. But let me show you. So let's do it again, right-handed. Insert left to right, front to back, wrap, pull through, go so your needles are pointing in the same direction, then transfer. It seems like, okay, there's no difference between the two. Let me show you. I have made tiny swatches because I wanted to know what the difference was. So this is the first way. This is what the cast on looks like from the right side. This is transferring that loop with the needles pointed at each other. This is the second way. This is transferring that loop with the needles pointing in the same direction. And look how different they look. I'm going to take these 2 out. I pinned them down so you could compare them easily. But now I'm going to take them out so I can show you. Look at that. See how that looks? And it's fairly stretchy. This is what the back looks like. The other one. That is what the front looks like. This is what the back looks like. So you can see just that tiny, here, probably better to do it this because then you can see through it. That tiny change in how we mounted that stitch, look at the difference in how the cast on looks. Stretchy, 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 stretch. This one's actually, it's about the same stretchy, but it's not as visibly stretchy because this has those little lacy holes. Isn't that wild? Okay, so I decided that's what it looks like for the knitted cast on. Let's see the difference if we do the same thing with a cable cast on. Let's go back to the beginning so I can show you a cable cast on from the beginning. Bloop, 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 bloop. Okay. Slip knot. Yarn, yarn, yarn. The beginning of a cable cast on is exactly the same. Insert from left to right, front to back, and you want to catch that front leg. So sometimes this first one is a little tricky because of that knot. Also because I'm doing it substantially further away from my body than I normally would because there's a camera in between. There we go. So pull that through, and we're going to do with needles pointing at each other. But before you tighten it down, you want to stick your needle between the two stitches and underneath the left-hand needle. So your right-hand needle goes under your left-hand needle between the stitches. Wrap, pull that out, transfer it, leave it a little loose, put it all the way between, tighten it down, wrap, pull through, mount it with your needles pointing at each other. Or the variant, pull it through, needles pointing the same direction. Just like with the knitted cast on. The only difference is with a knitted cast on, you're inserting your needle into the leg of the stitch. The cable cast on, you're inserting your needle between the two stitches on your needle, and you're leaving this big space here so that you have the extra. So see how that's different motion? You're just needles pointed in the same direction. So that's how they get on the needle. Let's look at the difference between those two. So get out of the way. This is transferred with needles pointing at each other. This is transferred with needles pointing in the same direction. The difference between these two is more subtle than the fairly significant difference on the knitted cast on, but it is there. What you can look at is with this one, you get this rope-like effect, and that's from going between. But it looks really rope-like because the top and the bottom strand are roughly equal sized and they're moving. Here, you've got this long strand and then the other one is shorter. So it's subtly different. Not as significant of a difference as it is, but this one looks a little looser. It's not as even. So let's take these out. Pin, pin, pin. So, that is, oh, you know how I tell the difference? I put knots in them. So this is pointing at each other. This is, the bottom one is both pointing in the same direction. There. See how you can see? It's a slight, subtle difference, but there is definitely a difference between the two. Let's see stretchy-wise. This one stretches like that. This one, this bottom one is a little bit tighter. It doesn't have quite as much stretch as the top one. So if you really want the stretch, needles pointing at each other. but it's a very minor difference. Let's look at what the back of the cast on looks like. There we go. And let's check the stretch on these guys. So this is needles pointing at each other. This is needles in the same direction. Try them together. Yes, definitely. So needles in the same direction. No, this one actually feels tighter. So needles pointing at each other is tighter on this one. Who knows? Logic and experimentation are two different things. So yes, that is really interesting, and I hope you found it interesting too. I hope you enjoyed going along on that little exploration, experimentation, mad science of just this very simple part of casting on. There are literally hundreds of different cast-ons, but I'd never really seen anyone really explain what changes can be made depending on how you mount that stitch onto your left hand needle, just in a simple, I mean, the knit on cast on is one of the most basic cast ons there are, and as we've just shown, it's really two different cast ons with two very visually different results and structurally different results depending on how you mount that stitch. Now obviously the difference in the cable cast on wasn't that substantial, but visually it still had a different appearance, very subtle, but a different appearance. So I hope this might encourage you to experiment with your knitting, and if you don't know how something works, try it out. See what happens. See what happens if you change it a little bit. See if you get an interesting and beautiful result, because really that's how I approach my knitting and my design. It's like, what's going to happen if I do this? A lot of times, nothing. A lot of times, not a particularly good result. But then sometimes it's just amazing and cool and fascinating to me. And I think that one time of having something really interesting happen is worth doing quite a few experiments that were just kind of like, whatever. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it the thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload any new videos, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. And if you want to keep on watching Barbara knit, the YouTube will be suggesting a video here that they think of mine you might want to watch. So you can keep on watching. Thank you so much.